Hello and welcome back. So today I'm going to do a posy arrangement in this lovely zinc container. I've got my floral foam already in the vessel and you'll see that I've kept it below the level of the container so that when I finish the design I'm not going to have a huge amount of floral foam to cover, which sometimes makes the design quite cluttered and quite heavy in the centre. I've got some country flowers, and what I might do is create this first as quite a structured design and then redo it later on as a more loose and informal design, so you get a contrast between the two different styles. Okay, so my foam is nice and secure there in the container, and I'm going to start by creating the main focal flower. So this time I don't have a huge amount of foliage going in it. We've got a bigger selection of flowers, and often I create an outline shape first, but today we're going to go straight in with the focal flowers. And this is a wonderful, very soft, almost rose pink carnation. And this shade, this sort of almost vintage shade, is really quite popular at the moment. And what I'm going to do with these is insert them into the foam so they all look like they're radiating from the centre point, which is very traditional style of arranging in this type of arrangement. So this is what we call radial, and they all come from the centre point, and hopefully if we look at it from different angles they're fairly similar in their positioning. And we're starting quite a structured pattern with 4 flowers. Now it could be 3, but I've got 4 of the carnations here, so I thought that would give us a good starting point. And it's almost like a clock, so you could think of it as being 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock from where you're looking, and 3, or it's almost like a compass point, so north, south, east and west. And that gives you your 4 starting points to this type of design. Often when we're making round shapes, we would use 3 flowers instead of 4 because it gives a more rounder appearance. 4s, just like those compass points, tend to almost square off the shape of the design. So if you can see that there, they're almost equally spaced out, which is what I'm trying to achieve. They're pretty much all on the same level if we look at it from the side, and they're all radiating out from a centre point. I'm just going to slightly move that one, and that starts a really interesting circular shape. And if we think of a dome effect coming up, it's going to be slightly raised there in the centre with, in my case it's going to be roses, but it could be another carnation, it could be a different flower type. And depending sometimes on what angle you look at it from, those 4 equal placements might slightly vary, but we've roughly got it there, and that's good enough at the moment. Okay, so I have some soft, very pastel coloured roses. They're all different colours, and sometimes when you're learning it is easier to have all of the same colour, but I had these wonderful vintage tones here in the studio, so I thought this would be a great choice with those lovely carnations. And I'm going to go in with my my height flower next. So we're almost going slightly larger than the carnations on the outer point. And this is definitely more formal, so we have those set patterns and those repeated placements of flowers throughout the design. So that's my focal, or my height flower. I keep going to call it the focal flower, but it's not. The focal flower is these 4 here. Right, okay, so we'll go in next with the roses. And the obvious position for me, because we are creating something formal, is to create a rose in between each carnation at pretty much the same level. Now I have that one there. Let's just remove the leaf because it's a bit of a poor quality. Now it is really windy where I am today. We've got a right old gust blowing through the area, so I'm hoping that you're not picking up the sound of the wind too much. Now what I'm looking to do is to place that one in the centre, or as nearest to the centre as I can get. And if you look at this section here, we've almost got a triangle forming between the rose and the carnations on either side, and I'm looking to place this rose almost in the centre, slightly off to one side. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then what I'm going to do with a rose that's almost the same colour is to place it on the opposite side of the arrangement. So if I come right the way across to this side, again I'm repeating the colour on the opposite side. If you don't have matching colours, don't worry about it too much when you're learning. But then again, if I look at it from this angle, we've got that triangle forming with a rose almost in the centre. And then if I go back to the area that doesn't have a rose, then you can see this triangle once again and a place in the middle there to put your rose. Now I do have this colour, and we have a matching pair. Now this is Hypnose, a variety called Hypnose. It's almost limey green in its colouring with a slight pink edge to it. It's actually one of my favourites. But these roses were bought in a mixed bunch, so I wasn't sure what colours I was going to get until they arrived. Sometimes you get pairs within the bunch, sometimes you get individual colours. But now the squared effect that those carnations were showing at the very beginning is starting to soften because we're incorporating more flowers. And I'm trying to keep that circular shape, my container circular, so it's nice to repeat the shape of the container and make a round arrangement in there. Okay, so at the moment it's quite clear that this lovely mauve coloured rose in the centre is standing up there on its own. It doesn't have any friends to accompany it, but we'll soon sort that out in just a second. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, let's see if we've got any more roses that are matching. We have these two softer pinks, which possibly are Charmant. Very, very soft pale pink. And then we have two more lilacs. So what I'll do with these is I'll bring these closer to the rose in the centre, but this time I'll put it alongside my carnation. So we have we have a rose in between the carnation. Now I'm putting a rose higher up in between the main height flower and my focal flower on the side. And I'm fortunate enough that I have two matching ones to go opposite, and then I can do the lilac colours in between. And often I say to you, when you're learning, it's quite often better to follow structured patterns until you become more confident in what you're doing and more confident in your flower choice, and then you can become more relaxed in the style that you're doing. But sometimes it helps. I suppose it's like cooking, and you follow a recipe, and as you become more competent in cooking and far more confident, then you might miss out a certain part of the recipe. And flower arranging is the same. Just get yourself familiar with some basic rules, and then you can play around and become more confident. So you'll see now I've placed this main rose there in the centre, and then you have a carnation, and then I have that rose there in the centre. And if you haven't got the same colour or flower combination as me, if you can't get roses and carnations, then it can be anything that's accessible at the moment. You think about scale again and the principles and elements of design. My flowers are fairly similar in size, so the scale, along with the scale of my container, is suitable. It's not, I haven't got anything that's very large in there or anything that's too small. And my colour combination at the moment is quite pale and pastel, so you're probably looking at tints, tones and shades of one colour. And I got an overall outline shape created, which I'm hoping is going to be circular. Right, so what have we got next? Now, you might have seen these in another one of my videos. This is Penstemon, and traditionally a summer flower in the garden, but I've had these in through the Dutch auction. And of course this is a completely different shape. So we have a spike or a linear shape which is a really good contrast against the rounds of the arrangement that I already have in. And what I'm going to do initially with these is to take them around the outside and accompany each rose. So again, it's quite a set pattern, something that maybe more competent arrangers wouldn't do, but it's a real good starting point for arranging. And because I don't have my floral foam raised above the container, I can't come in that quite severe horizontal placement. They're coming in a more diagonal style, so it matches the radial placements of the stems that I've already placed in the arrangement. Okay, so again, and at the moment it is going to look quite stiff and a little bit stagnant because I'm copying a specific shape, but it'll soften as we add more materials. So you'll see there, the Penstemon accompanies my rose here and all the way around, again in that north, south, east, west position. Okay, so we've got one Penstemon left, which I'm going to use to accompany my top flower there. So it helps to bring the colour in from the outside towards the centre. And I have a few shorter pieces which we will add in more towards the centre. Again, just to make use of the flower head colour, the colours that are left, to bring your eye through to the middle. And it's got a really interesting colour on the base of the stem. The leaves are really quite attractive. So I'm going to make use of those and bring in this really pretty purple colour. And I'm going to work my way around quite evenly around the outside, almost sitting on top of the rim of my container, and bring that all the way around. Now, dark colours are very recessive, so they give your design depth. They also disappear, so if you were thinking of using dark colours in a very large room or a dark room, they would completely disappear and you almost get the appearance of a big gap or a hole, a void in your floral design. So dark colours can sometimes be tricky to work with, depending on where you intend on placing them. Okay, so that's made quite a big difference there by adding the darker colour in at the base. Now the design is starting to come together and look far more pleasing. Doesn't look quite so rigid and quite so formal as it did in the very beginning. Now I have some of the very attractive Eryngium, and of course if you think about texture, it's a completely different texture to what we already have in the arrangement. It's a different shape, so they will blend in beautifully but contrast as well in the texture and the colour. And these are much shorter, so what we'll do here is cut them down into a few pieces. And again, I'm going to work in a pattern, so I've put it in between the carnation and the rose. So I'm almost back to that first position. I'll just show you that one there. So we have the two carnations and the rose came next, and then I'm adding in the Eryngium. If I go to this position, we have two carnations, the rose, and then the Eryngium on the left hand side as I'm looking at it, the right as you're looking. And I'll do the same here. Place those in. I don't need the whole stem here, I'm just going to put two of the lovely blue thistle in. And again, I've worked myself around the outside, making sure that the Eryngium follows the outline, so I'm bringing it all the way around on the outside. And then what I'm going to do is just insert one head. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the stem off. We'll use that in something else, so that I've got this more manageable piece which will give me a longer stem there to go up and again accompany that top flower that I had in at the very beginning. Otherwise you end up with the blue spiky eryngium all the way around the outside and you get nothing there towards the top. So that at the moment is coming together quite well. Now I think we've finished with that selection. I'm going to go now with what we call a transitional material. So the materials here are the focal flowers and the line material. Now I'm going to soften it with some transitional material, much smaller head this time. And this is a wax flower. And just like I went around the outside with the Penstemon in the very beginning, I'm going to do the same now with the wax flower. This is a very soft pink colour. And I'm almost going in between those original placements. So if we look here, we have two of the Penstemon, and then I'm bringing the eryngium in the centre, just in front of that carnation. And you can see I've done that same pattern all the way around. And just like I did with the eryngium, we're going to bring some up towards the top section. And then with all the smaller branches that I have left, we'll fill in different areas, so that soft, floaty sort of texture is brought in throughout the design. So we haven't just got it on the outside and at the top. Work that around. Wonderful wax flower. It's one of my favourites. Has a beautiful lemon scent to it when you cut into the stem. It's just about, so we're in the spring at the moment. It's April and the wax flower is just about going out of its best season. It's much better from late autumn through the winter. There we are. So how do we think so far? I think I'm blending in with my jumper today, which is maybe not such a good thing. Now, you might have seen me use this one before. This is Flaspy or Lepidium, often referred to as green bells, and it's a hugely fashionable flower at the moment. And if you're looking to create anything that's country, has that meadow feel to it, then this is a brilliant material to use. It's very long lasting. If you're a keen gardener, it's one that's quite easy to grow in the garden. It will self-seed. And what I'm doing with this one, you can see how these pieces arch beautifully downwards. So I'm making use of that shape and angling them down over the container. So it softens the edge of my aluminium container. And it gives me that very soft look that I wanted to achieve. Beautiful plant material. Quite soft stem, so you have to be gentle when inserting it into the floral foam because it will snap quite easily if you're not careful. And I'm making the most of the pieces that are angled downwards, so you can see by looking at it, if I just hold that one up, how wonderful it drapes forward. Wonderful in wedding work as well. Quite a long laster too, so good one to have. You'd probably only be able to buy this at a florist shop. You probably wouldn't be able to get this at a supermarket or at a local corner shop if you're picking up flowers. You'd have to maybe order it in. But very good value for money when you do get it. And it has a delightful colour. It's quite a fresh, limey green. So it really does remind you of walking through the meadow, travelling through the country where you have all that very verdant green around you. And I'm just going to keep working my way around. And again, what I'm just trying to do is just work it in as equally as I can. So if I have some on the edge, on the left, then I'm trying to bring some in on the edge on the right. If I have some up towards the middle, I'm trying to equally disperse it out from one side to the other. And then your design visually will be balanced correctly. So you won't have one side that looks more full or have more colour in it than the opposite side. Now, of course, balance is one of our principles of design, and there are two types of balance. There's actual balance, so that enables your design not to fall over. And generally when you're in a flat container like this, it's unlikely that your arrangement will fall over. It's normally when you've got something taller will you have problems with stability. And then we have visual balance, and that is when your materials, whether it be the colour or the texture of your materials, is quite evenly dispersed. And if you think back to that very dark foliage I put in the beginning, if we'd have put too much of that on one side, then when you look at your arrangement, it would be very dark and very heavy on one side. So it's important to try and equally spread out the flower material, which is easier to do when you have these set patterns to follow. Because if you have pink on one side, you're adding in pink on the opposite side. It's not as easy to achieve when you're doing a more informal arrangement. So I think we're almost done now. The one thing that can be tricky about the Floristry is that it can snap when you're working with it, so you have to be quite light fingered, quite gentle with that. And I think we're pretty much done now. So not a huge amount of, well, no foliage in there at all. We've got flowers and some soft transitional material just to finish it off neatly. And this is an all-round design, so it's something that could sit on a coffee table or on the centre of a dining table. And hopefully that will help you produce an all-round design. Very fashionable colour combination at the moment with all these different vintage shades. So I hope you've enjoyed that one. And if you have been enjoying, then please like the channel or subscribe so that you get notified every time I upload a new video. Give us a comment or ask a question if there's anything you don't understand, and I will list below in the comments section the material that I've used today. And hopefully you've enjoyed, and we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Bye for now.